Hi everyone, welcome back into the classroom, our place out here in Pennsylvania. I'm going to continue showing you some of the new products, some of the new ways. We're going to head into next week. We're going to start our Alla Prima challenge and the Come Paint With Us series that you'll find, free series of lessons. You'll find those over on our JansenArtStudio.com. All of the things we do, from products we use to everything, can be found in the video descriptions below. And you'll find all the links, so you can link over there. So if you want to see our free website of free classes and products, all that kind of stuff, it's just go check the links, okay? So you'll all find those all down there. And like always, make sure you click like and you subscribe to the channel so you don't miss when we're going to launch some of these new things. Okay, I'm going to paint on a board. This is my MDF board, normal MDF board. The links of some of the stuff that I use, you can just find that right over in the video description. I base coated it with just kind of a light tan color I made from yellow, black, and white. A little bit more of the yellow oxide. My normal painting palette I have out here: Hansa yellow, Darulite yellow, yellow oxide, naphtha red light, burnt sienna, pine green, phthalo blue, red violet, quinacridone violet, white. This is the medium that I introduced last week to you, which is the Matisse Derivan open medium that, Derivan manufactures our heritage multimedia acrylics. So our acrylics that we ship out, that we have here, it's our formula and stuff, but they make it for us, and they are a fabulous paint company. I've worked during my career for 4 different paint companies. Some I really like, some are, okay. Derivan is fantastic. I've been working with them for 12 years. They're a marvelous company, and they want to try to do with acrylics everything that we could even possibly think of. So this is one of their new ones, the open medium. And I showed you the last painting. You can find it on the channel, working with it, staying wet. This is the open medium right here. There's a new one that's coming out. This is one of the test bottles that I have out here. This says Jansen Thickener. This is a test bottle. It'll come out in its own packaging and stuff. And this is what we call a rheology modifier. And what it is, I had to go back to all my chemistry. Rheology is the study of how paint flows, paint dynamics, flow dynamics over the surface and stuff of your painting. So as artists and as basically paint manufacturers, we try to change those dynamics to let you do different types of techniques. Well, let me show you this, okay? We want to slow down the drying time. This does it. This, like I explained to you last one, it has a slow drying agent in it. It has some glue. It makes the paint slightly sticky. I love it. Okay, that's the open medium. This is our extender medium. Now notice the difference. Extender medium, like I showed you last time, is really thin. It's just like water. This is really thick and kind of sticky, and so it gives you a wonderful rheology to the paint that you're going to be working with. I love it, but I like it. Extender actually dries slower than this open medium does, but open medium is thicker, so that it will actually dry a little slower because it's thicker. So what we have is. This was Derivan developed this to thicken paint, but I also use this in lots of different kinds of ways, and I'm just going to put out a little bit. Okay, it just takes a little bit here, and you can see it's a tiny bit. And I'm going to mix this right up into, and you can see it instantly start to happen here, right up into my extender here. You can see what is happening to it. It's thickening up the extender. Right to the, and if I just keep whipping it up here, it will make that little bit. You can see, you keep whipping it. See how thicker it gets? It's thick, 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 thick. So now what you have is a really, really slow drying, thick extender. See, the thing is, if you can make your paints thick, the thicker the paint, the slower they dry, because there's physically more paint for you to dry. So now I have a real slow extender, but if you notice it here is not, it's not as sticky. It's going to feel different. See how this drags out, for the medium, and this one doesn't. This one doesn't drag it at all. You try to drag it out, no, it breaks away. you can mix this up right into your paint. So if I wanted to take yellow, for example, and I mix this all up right into here, now I have a yellow here that will, I've been testing it. As a matter of fact, I've been using this product now for just about 1 year. Started last December. And I've been testing it for about a year in all different kinds of paintings here. So it mixes up and in. So what's the difference? Okay, the open medium has some glue in it, some binder in it. So you can add as much as 1-to-1 to that and not have to worry about it. The extenders don't. So you have to keep in mind that as you're adding that to, and the thickener, and you're adding that to the glycol, or what is called the extender, to it, you're not adding any kind of glue to it whatsoever. So if you take your paint out too thin, you're also reducing the ability of it to stick. But this now will just take so long to dry. And you can use this thickener in just regular paint here as well. So if let's do this red here. If I take this red right here, and it's nice and thick, but well, let's say I wanted this to be a little bit thicker. Okay, I wanted this to be just a little bit thicker, and it just takes a tiny bit. So there's a little tiny drop of that. We'll start to mix this right up into this paint, and you can see immediately this allows you to do really a thick impasto technique. See what happens to it? You know, for us and alla prima and everything, this is going to allow us to do wonderful things. Now, is this slow drying? No, this is not slow drying. This will dry, excuse me, it'll dry as an acrylic because it's thicker, okay? But now you have a paste. So here was the original consistency of the paint, and then here it is now, just a tiny bit of the thickener added to it. So if you wanted to do impasto type techniques, or look at this, like you drag it, you know, where I like to get those broken edges in some alla prima effects. Those broken edges are really easy to do now because you thicken your paint and it has more drag across the surface. I need to add extender to it or open medium to it if I want to slow its drying time down. So you're going to be able to control the thickness, how well something adheres, the thickness, the drying times of everything you're going to do by how you work these mediums together. And over the course of several years, we'll show you all different kinds of ways that we can do this. But isn't that fantastic? So towards the end of the painting, especially in a lot of my wildlife and stuff like that, where I like to do fur techniques or florals and more modern contemporary florals, I like really thick stuff. And, you know, where this paint is not quite thick enough, I can certainly make it thick or mix it in. Or you can take that thickener and add some of the open medium to it. Now I have a slow drying, thicker paint as well. And it has the feel and the look and the feel of an oil paint, and it'll dry slower. So there's a lot of different things that you can do, okay? All right. Let's paint some flowers. We're going to go back through. I'll use some extender and some open medium. We'll just start working with this. I'm going to show you a whole series of videos here as we start to show some of these new products and some of the new things that acrylics can do, okay? So like I said, I have my board here. I'm going to come down. As a matter of fact, I'm just going to take some of my blue right into some of this white here. I'm going to add just a bit of the open medium, and I'm going to thin it, though. You know, I came from oils where we would always paint thin or thick on top of thin. So I have a tendency to thin out my colors a bit as I'm going to be putting them down onto something. And I'm going to use phthalo blue white here, little extenders, and then I'm going to gray it down here with some of this red here, and thin it with just a bit of the extender here. Okay, and I'll start to push that on this board here. I love the blues and blues and browns and you know, they sell well for me as a selling artist. They, you know, these color combinations and stuff just sell really well for me. I'm going to take a little bit of burnt sienna right into that, and I'm going to push this right in. You know, different types of colors of backgrounds and stuff like that. They just give you, just real fun to make. Let's just put in some colors like this. I love Richard Smith paintings, who does manipulates all different kinds of backgrounds. Now, this is a little bit thicker. Even though I thinned it out, it's still a little bit thicker because I use some of that thicker color, and it's really wet. It's really, really wet here, and will stay wet through my painting. Now, I'm going to manipulate this just a bit because I like to do this with backgrounds. As a matter of fact, I'm going to add just a bit of water over here, thin this out, because I like variation. And this is part of the fun that I have during painting, is I like to just play backgrounds. And I might come in here, pure alla prima, and shoot in some nice colors, reds, spark some reds, spark some yellows, but that's kind of pretty as a nice path of blue going right through. And then I'll come up and we'll paint some flowers up on top of that. I think that'll work. Now, over here you can see it's really wet. Over here where I thinned it with the water, it's already starting to dry here, see? And so you can see the difference of it. Even whenever you add water to something, you're adding the fast-drying product of acrylic, and it's going to dry fast. This is going to dry a little slow. It's going to allow me to manipulate my colors a little bit to put in some flowers here. I'll take some white, some dirty color here, and let's just push in some smaller little group of like wild roses or something here. We'll push together. I'm going to, as we're heading into the holidays now here, this year, I came up with a thing that said, I like a lot of you, our studio likes to support, artists starting out. We always like to do that, and we like to see everyone get successful. And so I'm going to, with some of the Alla Prima series, my plan is to paint some smaller, maybe some 8x10s. This is 11x14, so you can have a really nice frame for it. You can just go down to your local store and get a nice frame, pre-made frame for that. Not expensive. And but I'm going to do some 8x10s, which is a standard photo size in this, and it would be perfect little things you can paint up to sell for the holidays or give out as gifts. I think that would be a lot of fun. Okay, so that was my 3/4 inch brush. This is my 10. This is my old standby go-to Fusion 10, which I absolutely love. And let's come in and let's work some colors into here. First, I normally put in cools. I'm going to paint more of an open rose here. So I'm going to put some warmth down into some of these flowers here. Now everything's wet. Now see how the yellows disappear real quick into here. And I'm using the yellow oxide and the diarylite. Everything disappears real quick down into here. And I'm going to use that wetness to kind of manipulate the edges and the colors here a bit. But they disappear. Now I want some of this background to come through, so I'm going to start building some colors. I want some yellows. I want some light pinks. Let's take even a little bit of our slow drying extender into that. Let's make a lighter kind of a pink color, maybe a little bit of coolness to it here, and let's push this in. What you try to do, when I look at all different kinds of roses, I look at their coloring and stuff, and I like the yellows and the reds and stuff. And when I paint those, of course, they sell really well, because that's what I am. I'm a selling artist, and I look at everything as how my collectors are going to like it, and so. And I look for what colors that they like as well here. Sometimes I paint for me. Most of the time I paint for my collectors and stuff. So here's some pinks and some yellows. Those are going to look great. Let's put in some toned, darker greens in here. I'm going to manipulate some of the background colors up through here. And I want these to work into the edges of the flower. Since I'm painting Alla Prima, wet into wet, I'm going to keep building everything here wet, like this. Now, if you play around for an hour here, it's going to dry on you because I'm not adding that much. As a matter of fact, you haven't seen me add too much more since I started. So I control, it's a fall day out here at the studio. It's a beautiful day. We just went through a cold spell, and now it's 75 outside. It's beautiful. I have the studio doors open here, and the thing is about it is that it's a drier air. We're in winter time, coming into the winter time now. And so the air in the wintertime is drier. And as an acrylic artist, that is when it dries fast. A lot of people think, oh, the summer heat. No, acrylics dry through evaporation. And the winter air is the driest of all the airs. You ever notice, those of you who live in snow country like we do, it snows all the time, but then the roads dry up immediately. And that's because the winter air is very dry. And so it can, as an acrylic artist, it can dry your colors very quickly. So we keep that in mind. Now, I'm going to push all of this together and make just some beautiful color passages here. I like to manipulate it. Sometimes I blur it with my big brush like I showed you last time. Sometimes I just push it around like this to create some movement through those colors here. Just like that, to where those roses are going to sit in there. Let's add a bit more red right down in here, and I'll look for some variations, and this is what makes roses and flowers and stuff all different. Now, let's come out here. Matter of fact, let me just push some of this up out of the way. We'll use a little bit of it here into making our grays. And you can palette knife mix in, like take some of this open medium, palette knife mix it in here. Find yourself a nice neutral gray that'll look pretty onto the flowers. About a 7, so that's about a 7 there. So, find yourself a nice neutral gray here. Put a little bit of the color and stuff into that. And let's come here. Normally you see me start into the centers. If I'm going to paint more of an open rose, I'll usually start to the outside here like this. Not always. I hate to give myself like this is how I do it, because I change all the time so I don't develop habits. I just like this sort of suggestion. So I'm going to pull out and manipulate through and create some of those transitional halftones just by the blurring of the color through here. That's what I'm going to do here. And let's set a back little open petal here. So you'll see me do a lot of the petal edging kind of technique. I pick up in that corner and I'll draw the petal and I'll come across like this, and I'll push to pick up some of that background color, maybe leave the edge of the petal there. I'll look for some variations and stuff like that into the color. There's all different kinds of ways. That makes it fun here. But I like to just build a bit here. Sometimes I just let those, be not perfect, not precise, but basically there's the shape here. Let's build like the front of one here, coming out this way. Maybe a petal or two up like this. We'll push and pick up some of that nice blue through there. I'm pushing to... And that blue is just nice and wet, see? It's nice and wet because I added that medium and stuff to it. And I'll push that through here. We'll let some of this just be lost out here. So I don't get some of the shapes. A lot of times, I paint when I teach you roses, and I'll teach a lot of the same type of shapes so that you can, get a handle on them and learn them. But kind of fun to paint different shapes as well. Let's put some light pink back in here and just work a bit of that in and out there, like that lighter pink strikes of that through those tones here. Boom, just push some of that in and out there. Paint for difference. That's the hardest thing, it's you get into habits, or you find one way, oh wow, that really worked for me, I'm going to repeat it. Well, I try not to do that. I did for a long time, and you have to when you're learning to paint, but you don't want to repeat too long for too many times. So I'm going to take a little bit of that slower drying stuff here, push it on to this edge. Let's come out here, and we'll kind of paint. I'm not sure exactly how these roses are going to collide here, so I'm just going to, these open roses, I'm just going to paint around, start some of the shapes of them there. Okay, and we'll come down here and we'll paint these down. Now sometimes when I'm painting all prima, I just blur these right out onto the bottoms and let these just go down into nothing there, you know, and that's a lot of fun as well. Let's take some darker burnt sienna, maybe a little bit of our red, maybe model that with some yellows. Let's just tap in that darker kind of center that you would have in a wild rose, or as you see the open rose. Put a little bit of those colors in there. Push them around a bit. Let them stay a little wild. Let's even put some red into that. Model that with some, so you get some different color marks. Loosen up your flowers. Good, loosen them up. But see, I like those transitional tones. We call them transitional halftones to sit back here through the flower, in different parts of the flowers here, to see that background coming through, see? And gives a little bit of that transparency and translucency to some of your colors. Now, let's come up here. Let's keep that pink active in our brush here. We'll put a little bit of that white, lighter pink kind of color here. And let's come up first here and let's develop a lighter color here, pulling it down, shaping our petals here now a little bit. And we'll push in and out. But we'll do a little more petal edging and a little more shaping. So I'm going to look for colors. Now that's a pretty big jump between that one and that one. So I'll probably slide over here, make a tone that's right in between, and add a bit of that to this one here. It actually creates the look of another petal here. I'll pick up that other light edge there. And I'm just going to, what I want to do is just kind of sketch around and draw the edge of a petal here. Just with that edge of the brush, that lighter edge. Maybe one right down in here like this. Here. Right down. Just create some different things. Now, a lot of times I would do, you know, stroke flowers and stuff, and I don't want to do too many strokes. So here I'm going to pull out so I get a different variation. So sometimes I'll pull in, sometimes I'll pull out, and I do that. What controls that is how much variation I want to give to my flowers here. Okay, so let's pull in some here, a little different. Maybe a little edge a little further out, so I don't make them look like they're all exactly the same. You know, when you're painting the roses, you have different, you know, sizes of petals and stuff, you know. So let's go up almost like a little bowl there. Let's put a bit of yellow right down in there too. That's pretty to see a bit of that coming through. Just tap your brush. See, everything's wet. So you have to be a little careful as you're coming in through here. You know, you're painting a little bit thicker paint and it's wet, so you can move stuff really easy. So you start to lighten the pressure that you use so that you don't move the paint as easy. And that's one reason why the fusion brushes that I use are really nice, because they're super soft, and so if I start to use a real soft touch, it won't move the paint quite as easy. But I'll just start building here. More white, more colors. I'll start building up here some front of the flower. So the flower, as I'm coming forward here, is getting lighter and lighter and lighter. Let's go back and revisit some of that pink again, right back here, and work that right back into the center here. Right back into that center and around. Put some of that pink, maybe just a little edge of white. You can, you know, you can just come in here. You can use a smaller brush if you like, but you can just come in and start to just manipulate that center. Let's tap through again a little more color, just to get some variations in there. Makes a pretty little, different little rose. Let's put a bit of yellow, more strikes of the yellow right out there. See, I like that color coming through. I'm going to push that right into my background color there. I like that. Let's take a streak of that yellow. And I'm not adding any more of the medium to this because I want it to kind of dry up as well here. So I have that original really wet base underneath it. And if I keep adding more and more and more medium to it, you know, it just keeps getting wetter and wetter and wetter. And I do like the acrylics to tack a little bit. But, you know, every one of us is a little different. That's the thing. And what Derivan and what we try to do is develop mediums and stuff that change the rheology or the working properties of the paint. And you as the artist can control it for what you like to do to develop your techniques. Let's build a little heavier light right up there, up onto this one here. And let some of this come in. So I'm just building that around, pushing that, letting some of those colors here come out. Let's push a edge of the petal here. Maybe a bit of this movement stuff. We'll let that just, see, I just move my brush around here. I move my brush around into the shape of the rose, and I've got so much wet medium there you can see all the movement. So whenever I move something here, it moves it around in the shape that the rose, that I want that rose to take. But you can see how wet, how thick and how wet that is there. And so you know, you have to every one of us will be a little different. Some of you will find that, you know, that are coming from pure acrylics, have been painting all your life with acrylics, you might not like the real wet nature of it, but you can see how much difference you can add to something by, you know, how you go about painting it with these wet, you know. It's really quite fun. So I'll put that on. Let's put a lighter bit here and strike. Sometimes, like I've showed you in the roses and the rose challenge, sometimes I will strike across and then pull in to give me a different look of movement to a petal here. You know, and that's what I paint, is the movement. Here I'm going to take that edge here and just pull in more of an edge right there. Let's build that edge a bit more into this one. Push that in and out there. So sometimes I'll change some of their shapes as I start to read a little bit more about the rose here. Sometimes I'll fold petals over and do different things, you know, by pulling this way and then down that way. You can roll and fold the petal around. You know, we show that in some of our classes, you know, how to roll and fold petals and do different things, you know. Just keep building them here, making pretty little flowers. Let's build a bit more light here. Right out to the front, let's take that stroke of yellow. We don't want to lose some of that. Put that yellow stroke down in there. Take a little edge of color you can draw in a petal here. Let some of your flowers, though, let's go back down towards our gray or color here. Let some of these petals just disappear. Maybe a little bit of rounding movement in here to say there's that center moving around in that flower. And, you know, you don't need to do that much. You just need to paint some movement around here. And the viewer will see them as petals and stuff like that. They don't need to, you know, they don't always need to see everything in you know, big detail. And, you know, so many times I always thought, oh, I've got to shape every single petal. You don't. You don't. You don't need to. You know, we've talked before in lessons about what we call implied petals, about leaving some things for the viewer to see. So here I'm just building, making sure I don't lose my yellow, so I restate it. But you see, everything here is still wet, so the blue's still wet, and stuff. So I'm lightening the pressure, and I'm having to paint. If you notice with this, when you paint all a prima like this, and you're painting the roses and shaping them like this, you actually physically have to paint quite a bit more than what you do when I do it with the dry version and use half tones and some of that. And that is because the background eats up some of the paint. It's wet, it eats up some of the power of your paint, so you end up having to paint things a couple of times. Now, there's no real structured petals in there, just a lot of movement that's working pretty well. I'm going to give just a bit more movement right in here just to close up that edge of that one a bit. Let's just come out here with a bit of this opened movement there. A little bit more grayed back here. And we'll let this one just stay very soft back up there like that. Maybe a little extender here, thin out my color so it doesn't have as much power. And I'll push it right out into that blue there to let those edges be really lost. We'll build just a bit more color right up in here to the front. A little heavier, a little more white, but still not pure white. You know, this is the color I'm using. You can see it's darker than the pure white here, but it'll look very white up here on the board because my board is darker in color. Those of you studying color theory, simultaneous contrast. Or in the S202 class, we were talking about color value and how it relates in portraits and stuff. So we'll just push some of that in there like that. That pushes that one there. That's not too bad. Maybe a bit more of a light edge. And see, this will really cause this part of that rose to advance right there. And maybe a bit of a chisel petal right there. And that gives a nice, that chisel power gives it nice. But see, that chisel's pulling a lot of power that way. And I want the viewer to go into the rose a bit. So I'll take some of my dark, maybe a bit of that yellow that I like to keep in there. And I'm just going to touch right where that shadow is and lift out just a bit here so that I take away some of the power of that stroke. So now it goes in and out just a bit. We might want this to come down just a bit more. That develops that bowl just a bit. So how you stroke these, you see how I build that is showing, you know, is building those roses. And there's 1,000 ways, you know, 1,000 ways. When I first started painting, we learned one way to paint a rose and then we repeated it everywhere. Now I know there's 1,000 ways to paint a rose. So I'll take away that right there and push that bowl in a bit. Take an edge here. Let's just draw that maybe a bit more. It's really hard when, if you're not used to it, when that's really wet because it wants to disappear a bit. And, you know, we're painting it more like an oils now here. So now I'm going to open this one back up a bit over here. They're almost pointing the same. I don't like that in a composition. So I'm going to open this one back up here and bring its motion down like this here. There we go. So it's rotating down a bit more. And I change that, and it's really easy to change stuff like that with the dark here. So there, we'll just put a little chisel. I don't want as much white, so my white's up here, so your eye goes right up there towards that area. Let's pick out a bit more white. Drop it right in here, because they're colliding and they're fighting a bit. And I see that, so I want this one to come up on top. So I'm going to take some light, going to be brave, and we're just going to stroke it on there, just like that. And put that petal, give it more power. So I wiped my brush here, pick up some more pure white this time. And I'm going to hit it again one more time. There, and that's about enough. Now that's getting a bit much back there, so I'm going to wipe my brush and stroke that through a bit, or push it and let some of that background come through to soften that next petal there. Maybe a bit right down in there. You can see I can remove it. I sketch with paint. And part of that comes from Sargent Sargent said, you know, when you're painting and you're painting thick, and you paint with thick, juicy paint, and everything that you do, now you got to realize this is 100 years ago. He's saying this. Every stroke that you make should be a drawing stroke. That's actually drawing your flowers. Now he was a portrait painter and a landscape painter, but boy, that sure applies to what I do in florals. A lot of what I do in flowers and stuff. So I like that. Now I'm going to take some of my thinner color, this gray. I have one there. I'm going to produce one more right down over here, turning down slightly. That's going to sit back up underneath that and fill up my composition just a bit more here. Let's put a softer, cooler color in here. Right down in there, we'll put some yellow in that. But we're not going to go quite as light. We'll let this one sit further. See, the blue's still wet, and I'll just push it right there into that blue there. Right, like that. Let's pull the gray with just a little bit lighter color here, and maybe set up like the front of the bowl of something here. Maybe the idea of some in and out petals here. But most of this is going to be sitting further down. So we'll spin a bit of this pulling down and around. See, I'm painting the movement. I'm not painting petals. Now my strokes will come out looking, my brush marks here, come out looking like petals, but I'm painting in and out the movement. And that's what I'm concentrating on, painting and pushing the movement. After I get the movement where I want, then I'll come back in and maybe hit a few little petals, more of a petal shape. Let's go back down towards a little bit softer, and you can see how wet that is and how quickly that kind of disappears out into that background there. So everything is a drawing stroke. And I think about Sargent a lot in his 10 principles of the Premier Coup painting. As I'm painting stuff, as I'm developing stuff, and it keeps me from getting into little trouble and little problems with my habits and stuff as I'm thinking about these rules that he established. And he wasn't really a teacher. He didn't do a lot of teaching, but he set up a lot of rules for himself as he explored all of these different new looks. And I've stood in the National Gallery just staring at paintings he's painted, 120 years ago, just going, wow, the power of his strokes and the color and these uses is just phenomenal. How do you know to do that? I'm just going to round that bowl down in there like that. Push that rounding stroke there. Drawing stroke. Let's put some softer little petals right down here so you can get an idea. You could set these little blossoms up in all different kinds of ways here. And out here where it's a little thinner now, this is a little drier out here. Now, I can just thin out my colors. I could add some more medium to it because I haven't been adding a lot of medium, to this, and that will keep these wet, or I can let that just start to fade away down here. Not get quite so much here. And here we go, down, and just let some of this just fade away here. Matter of fact, I might even put this one right up on top of that. There, like that, so that pushes that other one a little further down as well. And you can, all different kinds of ways you can push more of a bud up in through here. Let's push just a bit of red, some color, red color, cool color into that. Push a little bit there. Take some of our gray, a little bit of light, and just quickly suggest a bud shape here. That just might be maybe a reaching petal coming out a bit, and make like a little bud there of that one into the back. Soften that back. So that blue and stuff here still wet where I put a lot of that stuff there. It's still wet, nice. So you can see this there, and you can see quickly, you know, create some of those little bits there. And let's just model some of this through. And there's my dog barking in her sleep there. I think maybe the microphones can pick that up. Now, there is something here that's kind of bad. I just almost lined up all of those right there, but I can use some negative painting to get rid of some of that. Push some of this back a bit. Push some of this one back up underneath here a bit more. So it's a smaller, almost like a little bud. Push some more of that color back. So a little blue, little green. Sometimes red violet into that. Little cool colors. Pine green, burnt siennas. Cool colors. Put in some nice high contrast here into this area here. Let's put a bit of high contrast into here. A little negative painting around. Push that around right into some of those petals. This is where, you know, you'll have impressionist painters will start to push in other colors. Let's push a gray right back into that to get a lost bottom edge here of some of these roses again. Right down here, we'll just draw that little edge, and see that gives them a translucency in there as well. Here, let's take some of this, a little bit of that blue, come right back here with a bit more contrast there. So I can paint some of this contrast around and control where it's going into the painting, up and down and across that nice color movement. And look at that nice straight line there. Let's not do that. Let's blur that out a bit. Make that petal. There. That'll work. Let's get some of our greens and lose some of this, pull some of this down a bit, get a bit more movement going on back down here. So I like these. That gets more of that contemporary movement there to some of this here. And you can make smaller little adjustments to your composition. You know, start out here with just a smaller little, almost like a flower, little yellows here into that. Makes pretty. Everything is still wet. That's the thing. You know, everything is still wet. So I have to, and as you guys are playing with this and stuff, you're in for a shock as you're painting this with the wet. The colors stay very sensitive, you know, to your brush. And so learning to paint into the wet is really quite a good thing to do, because it teaches you how to be softer with your brush. I'm just taking a bit of this background, pushing that into the flowers as a different tone here. I'm always one, you know, you say, well, how do you know how to do that? Well, it follows one of our principles, is if you create a color, move it. That's it. So I created kind of an isolated color out here, and so I've got to move it. I've got to follow my rule and move that tone. And that's what I'll do, is I'll just touch that out and around here and move that out and create some other little marks and interests there like that. Maybe I'll push a bit more of a yellow right up into that one. Make that just a bit more different. And see, I like that here. This is up in towards my center here. So, you know, we can really get some nice interest. Nice brush marks, nice calligraphies. Work your lighter colors back up in there and get some nice looks. Real powerful, quick jabs of color, like those of you that, you know, had studied with me like in the S104 and stuff classes. You know, we always talk about Petit and how Petit utilized, you know, the marks, the color marks. And I like to do that and building that. Let's reverse, take some of that out to pull in that bowl again. Right there like that. See, that makes a pretty lots of multicolor going on in here into the front of this little rose, more of an opened rose, and just give some more color. We can just leave these nice little marks like that. Just more colors, more stuff going on. So yeah, I like that. Let's get down here and maybe a bit of our blues come through here and push them. See how it's still wet, see? And I'll push those through here. Blur that out through that. Pull that down. That gives you just nice, I like little touches of color. So let's take that blue and let's just pull out right out through here like this. And see how that smears right into some of that wet color that's right there, see? And this is where, one of the things that I like to do is I like to have areas like this is dry. This all right in here is really wet. And I like that happening within the painting. So as I'm mixing stuff and doing stuff, sometimes I do that intentionally. Sometimes I do it accidentally, but I like the intentional, to do that. Now, why do you do that? So that you get different areas or different looks, as these colors are coming off. You get different looks to them, and that's kind of important, this. So let's get some of this green. I'm just going to take down, see how I can paint back and take down the size of some of these other outside flowers here and adjust. So I got these just a bit big and a bit lined up, and so I'm just slowly negative painting into them and pushing them back in size so I get my size back up to my main flower there. That's the beautiful thing about, you have a concept, you have an idea, and halfway through your idea it may not work, so you end up just having to change it. And that's what I love about painting, is that it doesn't always work, and you have to sit back sometimes and grab a cup of coffee, sometimes a nice Canadian Club and 7-Up, and go, what did I do? How do I get myself out of this? Sometimes it works real fast. Sometimes it takes a little bit of thought. Sometimes I have to go ask my wife and daughter to say, hey, take a look at this, and because I'm not quite getting it, and I know something's off, and they go do that. But see, this is just making an explosion, a different look, an explosion of roses and stuff here. I kind of like it. And we'll use a little bit of the darker colors here, some burnt siennas, a little bit of the red violets here. Put in some ideas of some stems here. Nice dark colors here. Push that around a bit. Like those ideas of stems, ideas of calyx here. Here coming through. Little, this is, I like marks like this, and they don't always have to be like, continuation of stems, but I do like marks and lines. And boy, look at that little stroke of red violet out there. That's kind of pretty. I might enhance some of that just a bit. Little marks go through. This starts going into more of the impressionism that I really like, and I start getting wild. When I first started this, and some of you that are following along with you, some of you that have followed along with me for years will notice I'm changing, and I'm getting braver, and I'm getting more impressionistic. I hope that I always hope that I make a rose that looks like a rose, but you'll notice I'm changing a little bit more impressionistic. Now, I'm going to, in the new series, I'm going to do some very realistic roses. And, and I enjoy stuff. Like I painted this here, and I painted this morning as a study for the, a glass, the color glass. We did that other glass back there on the channel, last week. And I started painting these roses, and I started them out a little bit more closer to what was there into the setup, and then I just started to do my thing and started getting more impressionistic, which I like, and look at that nice little red violet happening right there. and I like that kind of stuff. But everybody's a little different. But long story short there, I like to try, and I'm really enjoying the impressionistic, where my art's going right now, a little bit more impressionism, and it's allowing me to work some of the things that I really like, changing, advancing. I love decorative painting. I'm going to open this rose back up over here again, just because I'm going to turn it that way just a bit more. And see, I can do that. I'm going to add a little bit of the loose color here, a little bit of my thinner stuff here, so I'm blending right down into that, or manipulating a wet edge, an olive primer wet edge there. I'm going to put a little yellow, a little darty light into that, right in there, so I carry a bit of that. And see, I look for these roses to be a little different. But see, you can change. You can change. Don't ever get focused. This is one thing, okay? If I'm going to help you in a lot of ways, first a couple of things. So here, okay? I got this email from a lady that was painting along with me, and she asked me for my help. Yeah, sure, I can help. I'll try to help wherever I can. But she painted so much of her own creativity, and I don't have a problem with that it wasn't even anything like what I was doing in the lesson. Now, there's a difference between me sparking your creativity, and you go out there and you try it, and we help you that way. And then there's a difference between that and what I'm trying to do when we teach a lesson, like when we paint this glass and stuff. You got to follow along, and you got to paint that lesson, because I'm teaching you to see, just exactly like I had to do with my teachers. I had to learn how to see. But if you go out there and start doing your own thing with glass, how do I compare it? It's like, I'm baking a German chocolate cake, and you're making an apple pie. And I have nothing to help compare it to let you see where you're going. So, I always tell my students and stuff that are painting along with me, yeah, there's a time for creativity, and then there's time for a lesson where you follow along with what I'm doing, and you create some of the things that I'm doing. So because we're teaching your eye the ability to see something. There's a difference. So here I'm painting the movement. So I put in some light, put in some dark, and see, as I just paint that movement, I got a little bit of that round kind of edge in there. I want to get rid of that. So what's important about this? Get the movement in there. And see, this is all still wet up there, right up into the front. So now that changes that up that way just a bit more. They look like these roses belong together, but they're each painted a little different. I'm going to stretch this out a bit more pink. Get that color out here, reaching out a little farther, that nice pink. Here, like that. I think that makes kind of a pretty flower there. Like that blue going down through there. Now, here comes the thing. Do you want to put on some, lighter leaves? Does it need lighter leaves? I'm a real big advocate of, if you show a light to dark within the flowers, you need to show a light to dark in your leaves. Boy, instantly, this has that medium in there. Look at how creamy that is and nice that is. I instantly feel it when I touched into that. There's that medium, and it just strokes so beautiful here. Works so well, and my point is, will you use it for, always use it? No. There are times I'm going to paint pure acrylic. I'm a tone painter, but there are times I like to do variation, and I'm going to not use it, or I am going to use it. So I'm going to push a little bit of shadow here, push that lost edge into that one a bit. So in other words, light and dark, like I said before I get distracted again, light and dark a light and a dark to a rose, you should show a light and dark to your leaves. They're an object being hit within the composition at the same time. There was other older styles of painting that would come through and paint all these beautiful flowers and stuff with all of these colors, and then do all the leaves exactly the same color. Well, I did those for a long time, but then I started to not like those because I felt like they were hit with two different light sources. so they're not harmonizing together very well. We're just going to push some of that color together here. So right around where I have my lightest flowers, there's that nice creamy color again. We'll lighten up a little yellow green, a little light here, and we'll build a bit more, just a few, lighter. Love the feel of that medium. So this is just an idea here. I'm gonna do a lot more with you with these mediums and show you. We're gonna do some still lifes. We'll do some landscapes. I'll show you some fun little things that these mediums can do here. You know, of course, I'll be using them in the portraiture and stuff that I do. But I think it'll help a lot of you in to varying your looks and develop your particular techniques and stuff. So there's a pretty little nice light. You drop that into a frame. I think that's going to be neat. I might just kind of petted this up a bit here and add a few more. Look at that little bit of blue. Oh, that's a nice little touch right out there. Just kind of pulled that blue right across out over there. Accident that kind of makes it look like you know what you're doing, and it's actually an accident, but that's okay. We won't tell anybody. Here, we'll just drop some of that around, the little brush dance around. Makes it kind of pretty, but see how the roses here, and see like this one right here, you know, is that a rose? Do I really need to do anything more to it? You know, do I need to shape it up anymore, or do I just blur it around and leave it, blur it around, just leaving it in some of the shape? Try to have a bowl, a look of a bowl, and then it'll look just like a rose. That's all it needs. Let's blur down into this red here, right in there like that. Nice wet edge there. You get that. So this is just fun. I'm just having some fun. I've taught those things today and just kind of loosening up. Thought I'd paint just one more little go with this. We'll show you some of that medium, show you that new rheology modifier, or what's called a thickener, the acrylic thickener that's coming. It's being released next week, along with the open medium's already out, and the thickener is out in some areas, but it's going to be here in the U.S. It's actually here. It comes into our studio here in 2 days, and I'm just going to push a little bit of that around. And it's a fun one. It's going to allow you to do a lot of impasto, heavier techniques, but you could also use it to thicken up any of these mediums. There's a little bee that just buzzed me. That's my open door. There's a lot of nice techniques you can use that with any of these other mediums to make your paints even thicker. And there is a lot of really wonderful wildlife and impressionist landscape painters that use those real thick textured strokes towards the end of the painting, and I'm going to show you that, how we can get some of that stuff. I mean, you could pick a painting like this where you get this nice translucency and then just really build right up into the front of that rose some nice textured strokes and really make it come off the surface. We're going to be able to do some really fun stuff, okay? All right, so there's one for you to just enjoy. I hope you guys are enjoying it. Thanks so much for joining me on this journey of creativity and discovery that we're kind of doing, and trying new things. I got some other big paintings there. I'm going to try to edit out. I promised some of you on the channel of doing some of showing you a little bit of the blue glass, because the way in which you paint blue glass is different, the approach of it, than what we did on the colored glass, because you got to paint it in reverse, and I'll show you that. So we'll try to get that edited up and onto the channel here in the next few days here, okay? So look for that one. It'll be up. And and go over, if you would, okay, because we're putting a lot of time and energy into our channel, and I thank all of you for your comments and stuff. But go over to some of those links that are up there in the video description and stuff, and help us support the channel. That would be really awesome. We really appreciate it, okay? And you guys have a wonderful, wonderful creative day. If you have a question with something, drop me a comment, and I'll try to get to you. Okay, and watch for this one coming up. And I also, you see that little guy back there, sketched back there? That's the little black Phoebe with some open roses, little open roses. I'm going to paint him for the challenge because we're not done with our bird challenge yet, too. So that one's coming as well. Lots of stuff. Lots of stuff. Okay. Thanks a lot, guys. You have a great one.